Good evening, everyone. We're going to start in just another minute. Thank you so much for your patience. Please note that you will be on mute and we are not using video for the duration of the webinar. Also, the webinar will be recorded and we'll be sure to include the recording with a follow-up after tonight's event. Okay, stay tuned. Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for tonight's presentation, Reviewing Financial Aid Award Letters for 2020 College Enrollment Decisions. This specific webinar is designed for students and families who are collecting award letters right now and are hoping to make sense of them in time for College Decision Day. Please note that this webinar will be recorded. This webinar is presented to you by Moneythink, a nonprofit organization that empowers students to invest in the future by building technology that clarifies college finances. My name is Meredith Curry, and I'm a college access practitioner, a nonprofit consultant, and a partner of Moneythink. I am joined by Moneythink college financial coach, John Tamrat. As we dive into this content, we want you to know that at Moneythink, we are keeping you, the students, at the center of the equation. We're excited to talk to you about this important step in your college journey, something we've been doing at Moneythink since 2008. Since 85% of our students have reported trusting our advice, and 81% have used that advice to enroll in more affordable colleges, we truly hope that tonight's webinar will serve you and your families too. Now, many of you may already be familiar with Zoom, but please allow us to give you just a quick refresher. First, you're either joining us from your Zoom app on your phone or the desktop or a web browser. Regardless of how you're joining us today, note that you will be on mute for the duration of the webinar. Second, you will see that there is a chat and a Q&A. Please feel free to type questions into the Q&A and general feedback or insights into the chat at any time during this presentation. We will first present the content to you and then open it up for questions and answers. At that time, we will look at questions in the Q&A first. Should you decide to use the chat, please just note that it's defaulted to send those messages to us panelists. So if you'd like to send any comments to the whole group, please be sure to change that setting to all panelists and audience. We really encourage you to start typing questions at any time. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the end. Lastly, we will record this webinar, and in a week or two, you'll have access to the recording. As a follow-up from tonight's webinar, we'll be sure to provide you with some notes that go much deeper into what we discussed tonight. Okay, so now let's talk about our learning objectives for the webinar. First, we want to offer you some context. How are students, high schools, and college access groups working with award letters right now? With everything that's going on, your plans for college may be impacted. Our goal for tonight will be to support you and your families in making critical enrollment decisions. Then we'll talk about how important it is to understand your award letter. Families are making poor decisions based on confusing data, and we want to empower them to make better decisions with all the relevant data that they can possibly get. We will show you what to look out for in your award letters and empower you to understand, review, analyze, and then compare those letters. Tonight, we're going to talk to you about federal and state grants, federal and private loans, scholarships, work study, appeals, and more. Third, we'll talk about what it means to help you and your families make choices based on affordability. Your school counselors and advisors may not have the capacity to help you with your awards, especially right now due to COVID-19 disruptions. And that's why we want to help you understand affordability as you navigate this very important decision. And then lastly, we'll review scenarios to help guide you in selecting the best fit college based on affordability. Now, more than ever, You will need to advocate for your aid and aim for the least debt possible. So why is this so complicated? Why do students and families struggle every year to talk about financial aid and affordability? Well, because the nation's $1.6 trillion in student debt is fueled by confusing and unclear pricing and college costs. How can any of us confidently talk about something that is so unclear by design? This leads to bad outcomes at the student level, and that rolls up to the school, district, county, and state levels. Financial aid awards are a huge part of the problem. 143 unique terms are used for the word loan. This means that sometimes families don't even know when loans are being presented to them. 30% of awards include no costs. This means you might see how much you're getting, but you don't have the expenses to compare to. What good is it to know that you're getting $20,000 in grants if the total cost is $50,000 for the year and you can't figure that out in the award letter? 70% of letters group all aid together, and then they don't explain the differences between grants and scholarships or loans and work study. This is especially problematic since some of that money is available before you start school, so you can use it to pay bills right away, while money like work study isn't earned until later. That's why tonight we really want to talk to you about gift aid versus self-help and how to calculate the gap. This problem has led students and families like you to navigate this process with limited guidance and poor information on their own. Navigating your path to college is already difficult enough, especially if you're a first gen and a low-income student, and Moneythink doesn't think this is fair. Today, we plan to leverage our expertise in supporting you in navigating this complex process. So as we get ready to dive into our webinar, we want to give you a chance to go get your award letter and have it handy. In the reminders that were sent to you about this webinar, you might have seen a note saying that you should go and grab an award letter to get ready for tonight. And we're really hoping you can have one or more letters easily accessible so you can use it for an activity that we have later on. If you don't have a letter though, don't worry. We will have an example of one that you can use during the activity. But go ahead and take a few seconds now to grab one or more award letters so you can follow along with us for the next several slides. Here, we just want to remind you that you can access your award letters from either your email, your physical mail, or online college portals. The award letters are going to come directly from the college. For California state aid like the Cal Grant and the Chafee Grant, you can get information on your awards at Web Grants for Students. All right, and if you could do me a favor, and just so that we know that you're ready, can you type the word ready into the chat box? And that way we'll know that some of you have the award letters and we can get started. Okay, very exciting, y'all. We're starting to see some readies. Thank you for confirming. And as you grab it, go ahead and just type again into the chat that you're ready, just so we know. Okay, if you have your award letter or not, you'll see some examples right here on the screen in front of you. And what we want to do is just get started by taking a look at the reality of what award letters really look like. First, award letters can vary considerably from college to college. Just look at how different each of the pictures are on the screen right now. And that is despite federal guidance from the Department of Education. As I mentioned before, awards use 143 unique phrases just to describe federal loans. Less than a third of award letters differentiate between aid and loans, and that makes it really difficult to know what families actually need to pay out of pocket. There's also misleading and vague information around Parent Plus loans and work study. So sometimes it's hard to know how you're going to apply that information to your actual college expenses. Only 40% of awards included a calculation of what students would need to pay above and beyond the aid. And there were 23 different ways of calculating the remaining cost. that means that even understanding what the gap is from college to college is going to be different. That calculation is different. And then lastly, 30% of letters include grants, but they don't include college costs to compare against. And so we want to spend some time with you tonight just taking a closer look at how different these award letters can be and how they can be misleading if you're not looking closely enough. So we're going to go through a couple examples. Here on this on the screen, you should see 3 examples, and we're going to go through each of them. So starting with example 1 at the top. Here we see that there is a misleading calculation of net cost. Why is it misleading? Because they load up credit-based aid, which are loans, and then they say that it's $0 out of pocket. But credit-based aid, like loans, shouldn't be considered the way that this college does. It's not gift aid. In this example, the almost $37,000 in loans is the gap families need to account for, okay? So let's look at the second example, example 2 on the right. Here we see that this award letter is misleading about the Parent Plus loan. In the award, it says offered. However, you actually have to apply for Plus loans, and approval is based on credit worthiness. It's not right away and it's not confirmed. So in other words, that money is not guaranteed and you shouldn't be considered a confirmed part of your award. Lastly, looking at example 3 on the far left, this one is also misleading because they are trying to exclude the word loan. The 3 items that say direct subsidized, direct unsubsidized, and direct Parent Plus are all in reference to loans. However, because they don't clearly say loans, you may not realize that's what you're looking at or accepting. So please just take a few moments to be sure that you can see some of the issues that I've referenced in each of these award letters. And then if you have one in your hand, go ahead and circle or highlight anything that you think looks similarly funky or unclear. I'll give you just a few moments. And if, as I'm going through these scenarios or examples, you have questions, please go ahead again and type those into the question and answer, the Q&A box. Okay, so let's go ahead and review a couple more examples. So here in example 4 on the left side, you can see that the award letter has included loans as optional, but then they use that amount in their out-of-pocket calculation, and that's how they arrived at $0 out-of-pocket cost. In reality, they're expecting the students to have to take $38,000 plus in loans so that it's $0 out of pocket. We can see similar misleading information about out-of-pocket costs in example 5. They've offered the student $5,500 in federal subsidized and unsubsidized loans, and then they listed $26,517 in offered Parent Plus loans, which again are not guaranteed and are dependent on credit worthiness. In truth, the out-of-pocket cost of the student and family will be over $30,000 in loans, not $0. So it's really important that we're looking at, critically at the award letter and seeing what they're offering us and what the difference is between the types of aid. And why don't we just look at one more example? Okay, so here, example 6, our last one, we see an unclear award letter that lumps all of the student aid together. What colleges should actually do is separate grants and scholarships from loans and work study so that they're transparent about the differences in aid, because grants and scholarships are considered gift aid and loans and work study is considered self-help. Unfortunately, the way this letter organizes the information, this can easily lead a student like you to accept over $29,000 in loans, and about $23,500 of that would be a Parent Plus loan, which I may not have said enough times, or maybe I've said it too many times, but Parent Plus loans are not guaranteed. You have to apply and they're based on credit worthiness. So the college is also offering work study as if it's guaranteed, but something we really need to remember is that with work study, that money needs to be earned. It's not actually available at the beginning of your first semester or quarter as if you can use it to pay college expenses. To get work study, you're actually going to have to apply. You're going to have to accept it and then get an on-campus job or a work study job through your college, work, and then get your paychecks, right? And then you'd use that money towards expenses. So now I'd appreciate it if John would walk us through an example of what an actual clear and effective award letter looks like.
Thanks, Meredith. Now that we've seen examples of unclear, confusing, or very misleading award letters, let's take a look at what a good, clear award letter looks like. In this example, the award letter shows complete cost of attendance, has a clear award summary with the subtotals of different aids split up between the grants, the loans, and work study. And then it references clear next steps below. Ideally, we would love to see all award letters with this kind of format, but unfortunately, like we've been discussing, that is not always the case. All right, so we've seen how confusing, unclear award letters can be. We've also seen what an example of what a good award letter looks like. At the end of the day, colleges are primarily leaving it to students and families to figure out how much college is going to cost and how they're going to pay for it. Now, there are tools out there that can help families, like the Financial Aid Award Letter Comparison Tool, the Big Futures Compare Your Aid Awards, and U Aspire's Award Letter Analyzer. Unlike other tools, Moneythink analyzes the award to find the gap of the student will be responsible for without including the loans and work study. Once that gap is identified, we can then see if a college is affordable, somewhat affordable, or not affordable. So in the previous slides, we just went through to see how Moneythink analyzes and reviews award letters. Now, you can do the same to simplify award letters you've been receiving from colleges. The first step will be to collect the direct and indirect costs. As you search for and collect these numbers, use this hierarchy of where to get the college cost information from. Number one, the award letter. This reflects the most up-to-date costs from the school directly if they list it on there. Number two, the college website. Some colleges don't update this till late in the spring or summer. Number three, College Board or the college access sites. Also, be aware of a Moneythink tip to be aware of is to take a look at on-campus housing and meal costs, and look to take advantage of securing affordable housing options early. This can have potential savings of $2,000 or more in costs for the year. As you search for college costs, not all award letters, again, will show the indirect cost estimates. When this is the case, make sure you search on the college website for these numbers, College Board, or the college access site. If you are unable to find indirect cost estimates for a specific college, check out our conservative estimates that you can use and adapt as needed for planning purposes. Indirect costs are important factors to plan for, so students don't get caught unprepared when unexpected expenses for books, travel, or personal expenses come up throughout the year. Again, this conservative estimate that we've kind of come up with is regionally based, so it's tailored more for California, but you can take these fundamental numbers and readjust them that are more specific to your region and are specific to your needs as well. All right, so let's look at another example of an award letter and where we can look to identify the college cost figures. On this one, we can see the college cost figures are towards the bottom, and they've kind of split them up. So we can see the direct cost and the indirect cost figures that are being stated out on this award letter. All right, so now let's get to step two. Step two is identifying all the gift aid. This includes federal, state grants, institutional grants and scholarships, and any outside private scholarships that you may be getting. In most cases, you'll be able to find this information on students' award letters. In some cases, you may find that an award letter is missing a state grant or that it is not included in an award letter when it should be. So make sure to check for any discrepancies, such as one award letter including state grant, while another one does not. An example of this is Cal Grant. You can log into Web Grants to check on your Cal Grant. That way you can confirm if you've been awarded the Cal Grant A or B. Make sure you've completed the steps to receive that grant and have met the GPA eligibility requirements. For Cal Grant A, that requirement is a 3.0 GPA. For Cal Grant B, that's a 2.0 GPA. If you've been able to confirm you've been awarded Cal Grant, then that means the award letter missing the Cal Grant may just need to be updated by that college. If that is the case, reach out to the financial aid office to ask for your award letter to be updated with the Cal Grant amount included. You can count on your Cal Grant to apply to all of your eligible California colleges. For UC schools, Cal Grant A is worth $12,570 and $5,742 for state schools. Cal Grant B will show up as 1,672 with the additional 12,570 or 5,742 amount labeled as state university grant, depending if it's a UC or a state school. For private nonprofit colleges, your Cal Grant will be worth 9,084. Again, this is for all California eligible colleges. Now, for step 3, we'll take all the numbers we've collected to calculate the gap. When we calculate the gap left that you'll be responsible to pay, again, we do not consider the loans and work study in the award letter because we want to know how big of the gap there is after accounting for all the direct costs minus all the gift aid you receive in the award letter. Once we have that gap, this gives us the parameters Moneythink uses to define affordability of a college. This will also enable you to easily compare award letters effectively in terms of affordability. Now that I've shown you how to gather and collect all the college costs, gift aid, and find the remaining gap, let's get into how Moneythink defines affordability of a college. Moneythink's definition of affordability labels is stated through the lens of a Pell-eligible student. For non-Pell students, affordability may look a little different in terms of being able to get financial support from family and savings to help cover some of the costs. While taking those resources into account, students can still aim to stay within the defined loan and work hours suggested. We consider a college affordable if the gap is less than $7,000. This means that you'll be able to cover this gap reasonably with a combination of loan, work, and family support. You are able to do this by taking out no more than $5,500 in loans and or working 10 or less hours during the school year. We consider a school with a gap of $7,000 to $11,000 somewhat affordable. These schools can still be an option, but it may mean needing more support from family, work, or taking out more in loans than our recommended suggestion of $5,500. And that might potentially be working 15 to 20 hours during the school year. And finally, we consider a school with a gap of over $11,000 unaffordable. If you find yourself at these schools, you may struggle to cover the college bill, even with family support, working well in school, and taking more than the recommended amount in loans. We want to emphasize, working over 20 hours a week can be very detrimental to your success in the classroom. Taking large amounts of loans is also risky due to having high monthly payments when paying back those loans, which can further increase the risk of defaulting on loans in the future. Now, I'd like to have all of you join us as we walk through some scenarios together.
Okay, so if you'll recall at the beginning of the webinar and in our email reminders, we encourage you to have an award letter handy, and this is the time for that. So if you don't already have it in your hand, please go ahead and pull it out, your award letter. And if you don't have an award letter easily accessible, no worries. You see one right on the screen right now, and we're basically going to show you 2 different examples that you can walk through as examples with us. So what we are going to do is complete the 3 steps that John just went over right now with us. And we're going to start with step number 1, looking here at Sonoma's award letter. So what we want to ask you is, with all of the wonderful insights that John has shared with us about reviewing your award letter, can you calculate what is the total gift aid that that the Sonoma state is offering the student? So again, what is the total gift aid Sonoma is offering the student? Go ahead and take a moment to calculate that. And if you feel like you have a guess, go ahead and type that number right into the chat. Very exciting, y'all. So we're seeing that folks are ready, answers are being typed, and I really appreciate the attention to detail. So let's go ahead and look at what we got. And proud of y'all, you got it right. So $13,609 is the total gift aid, and we got that by adding the federal Pell Grant, the Cal Grant B stipend, and the state university grant. And at least in this award letter, right, it's kind of nice. They made it a little easier for us because there's a category column and we can easily see grant or loan. But I'm sure we also still looked really closely to make sure that it was the right amount. So you got that right. Then what we got for loans is $5,500 in federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. And then we also see $8,509 in Parent Plus loans. So it looks like no one captured loans in their gift aid, so good job. We want to make sure we always leave out work study and loans in this specific step. So let's go on to the next scenario. Here we're going to look at UC Santa Cruz. So you have the opportunity to look at a Cal State and a UC. So with UC Santa Cruz, let's do step one again. Please take a moment and calculate what is the total gift aid that UC Santa Cruz is offering this student. And when you get that number, please type it into the chat. We'll give you a few moments. Okay, the answers are starting to come in. Really appreciate the effort, everybody. All right, so let's take a look at the answers that we got on our end. Okay, so for those of you who calculated gift aid at $27,315, that's what we found. And we got to that number by adding the conditional Cal Grant A, the federal Pell Grant, the university grant, and the UC Health Insurance Grant, okay? So we also found $2,000 in work study, but remember, we don't consider this as gift aid because we actually have to earn that money first. And then what we got for loans is $5,500 in federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans, $1,350 for a university loan, and then $1,050 in Parent Plus loans or as a budget gap. So again, the points we really want to make for you here is that you should only consider free gift aid, which would be grants and scholarships, in this first step when you're trying to compare apples to apples between colleges. And then you want to note what the work study and loans, that they're offering you work study and loans, you want to note that, but you're going to hold on to it until the next step. So John, please go ahead and walk us through the rest of the steps.
All right, since we've collected the Sonoma gift aid, let's do the full calculation. We will give you the direct and indirect costs for this scenario from the previous academic year. So let's take a look at the direct costs. As we can see, the direct cost is for in-state student tuition, the housing. This student specifically chose an affordable option, that's $11,000, whereas the one that's showcased on the website is for $14,000. So I just want to make sure we notice that. And again, we're looking at the direct cost when we do the subtraction, not the total cost of attendance at this moment. So then let's bring up the gift aid that we all just calculated together. There we go. And I'm pretty sure some of you caught that difference right now in our total gift aid. It's a different number than what we had in the previous slide. And that difference is showing up through the Stephenson Family Scholarship. And yeah, that student has been awarded that, but was not showing on their award letter. So this might happen for a student who has applied to outside scholarships and got notified they've been awarded that scholarship. So this wasn't included in their original first award letter that was given to them, but we can now put that as part of their gift aid since that's been confirmed that they have won that scholarship. We've added that amount, so that gave us our new total of $14,109. Now let's take the direct cost and subtract the total gift aid to figure out what our financial gap for that school year is. And again, we're focusing on the money that will be owed to the college, which is a direct cost. Indirect costs, in turn, will be out-of-pocket costs that students will be responsible for throughout the year. This is not owed to the college, and they can have greater influence over these costs. For example, renting books or buying cheap used books instead of new ones, and being a savvy student by minimizing your indirect costs associated with being a college student. Now let's take a look to see if you got the same number for the gap as we did. We got 4,785 for the financial gap for the school year at Sonoma. That's due to the college. All right, let's try it for our second scenario now. And same process, we're going to give you the direct and indirect costs for that school year from that award letter. And then let's go ahead and bring up our gift aid, which has stayed the same. And now let's go ahead and do our calculation. Again, taking the $28,047 and subtracting $27,315. Again, I want to emphasize the direct cost, sometimes even the tuition may differ for certain colleges depending on major. So we've got to be accurate on that aspect of it. When you have the award letter, it should state that already. But if you're estimating, you should be mindful if your college has different pricing for majors. So let's take a look at the gap. There we go, and we got 732 for the student financial gap for the year at UC Santa Cruz. All right, so after you've calculated and found the gap of award letters that you've received, you can now easily compare the true affordability of the college options you have. As Meredith stated, you can compare apples to apples, making it an equal comparison now. Being able to compare your options with affordability in mind can empower you in making a well-informed enrollment decision that is best for you and your family. So let's use these two scenario examples. We can see both at Sonoma State and UC Santa Cruz come out as affordable options. We can now use all the calculations to make well-informed plan that can help us understand our options a little bit more clearly. If both colleges operate on a semester schedule, we can then estimate the fall bill, which is the direct cost, subtract the gift aid, and we're going to divide it by 2 for a semester of 2 terms. So although both options are affordable, we can clearly see that UC Santa Cruz would be the most affordable option with a very low out-of-pocket cost. This means that the student is in a position to use any money from family or summer job, savings, to not only cover the college bill, but also help cover the indirect costs for the year, allowing the student to take minimal amounts of loan or potentially even none at all. This isn't to say that UC Santa Cruz is for sure the best fit or the right choice for the student, since other factors are also very important to consider, such as the programs and majors offered, the college vibe, the location or distance from home, campus diversity, and many other factors that may make Sonoma the best fit option for a student in this scenario. Also, each student's family's financial circumstance may also dictate their options and enrollment decisions. Now, let's talk about how students and families should tackle loans.
Sounds good, John. So in that last slide, you saw that loans can be a way to fill your gap. And so as a student, you may be asking yourself, how much in student loans should you accept then to help cover said gap? And then from which sources? Now, for the majority of students, going to college does mean needing to take out some amount of loans, especially if you're low income. So it's important to know what sources of loans to consider. Federal subsidized and then unsubsidized loans are a great option because they offer competitive interest rates compared to the other options. Subsidized is even better because you don't accrue interest until after you're done with school, whereas you do with unsubsidized loans, meaning the total that you have due at the end of your college career is going to be higher than the original loan amount you took out. So student loans can be a good investment when you make an informed choice about your college. This means that if you pick a college that will really serve and support you in reaching your goals, assuming that you've gone through a thoughtful approach towards figuring out what those goals are, then the loans you take out can be a really good investment. However, if you don't make an informed choice about your college by rushing it, settling by choosing what others tell you to choose, or going just by name recognition or popularity or mascot or football team or whatever, it may not be a good investment, especially if it leads to more time spent completing a degree, because that means you're spending more years in college, meaning you're paying and taking out more in loans for each year, or going and not completing the degree at all. Private loans are the most risky to take out. So if you have to take them out to afford the college, it is even more crucial that you're making a smart choice and that you're really committed to that college for many reasons, okay? So John, can you talk to us about the importance of scholarships as another alternative to loans and how students can use any scholarship money to apply towards college expenses?
Sure. Now, some of you might have worked really hard to apply to many scholarships already, which is always great to do. Here are some tips to consider about scholarships. Unless you've won that scholarship, do not count that money in the bank. So don't make a financial plan accounting for a scholarship you have not received yet. If you are awarded a scholarship and the money will be given directly to you, then we recommend not reporting that to the college and instead treating it as cash and saving it to pay for your school expenses that will be coming up. If you've been awarded a scholarship and it will be paid directly to the college you enroll at, we recommend then checking to see what your college scholarship displacement policy is, or reaching out to the financial aid office to find out. Financial aid displacement is used to describe situations where a student has received an award letter from college and then tells the college they have won a private scholarship. Some colleges respond to this by reducing the amount in grants awarded to the student by the size of the new scholarship. That's a displacement. So for example, if you told the college you won a $2,000 scholarship, they may then reduce your grants by $2,000. Note that colleges can't subtract from the federal Pell Grant. That will remain intact regardless of scholarship winning. Now you might say, well, what's the point of applying to scholarships then? Well, the really good news is that 80% of schools won't cut into students' grants for receiving outside scholarships. So pursuing scholarship money can still help reduce students from needing to borrow more in student loans. If your college practices scholarship displacement, we highly recommend talking to your financial aid office to see if they can reduce the loans offered to you instead of the grants, since you don't have to pay back grants. Now, before we close out with our remaining tips and some reminders of points we made, let's do a quick check for understanding.
Okay, folks, so we just covered quite a bit of information. So we just want to stop for a moment, and before we answer questions you have for us, we're going to flip the script and ask you a few questions. So I'm going to ask each question one at a time, and please go ahead and answer type what you believe is the answer in the chat. So starting with the first one, which types of financial aid are considered gift aid, meaning you don't have to pay it back? Go ahead and take a moment to type that in. I'm so excited watching the chat blow up. Okay, great. So yes, acceptable answers are scholarships, federal grants, state grants, institutional grants, anything with the word grants in it. So you all are listening. When you're taking that first step, as we've shown you a couple times, you want to look at grants and scholarships first. And you'll see your grants in your award letters, and sometimes you won't see all of your scholarships. So you want to make sure to track all of that. Great, so next question. When reviewing your financial aid award letters, what types of aid are sometimes less obvious, but you need to be sure you know what it is since you have to pay it back? Okay, take a moment to type that answer. Nicely done. Yes, the L word, not love, loans. So loans, federal government loans, or private loans, which again would be less ideal than the federal subsidized, unsubsidized loans. So thanks for typing your answers to that second question. So the last one, once you figure out your bottom line or gap, which is the difference between your gift aid and the total and your direct costs, what are ways that you can cover this gap? Type all of the different responses you think are appropriate. Nice. Okay, so everything that we're seeing totally qualifies. So all of the different types of aid we've discussed, right? So scholarship, loans, grants, a job that you get on your own, work study through your college, family help through savings from your immediate family, and also contributions from outside family. Great, everybody. Thank you so much for paying attention. So now we want to just close out with some final thoughts that we have, and then we're going to jump right into Q&A. So this is your chance to start typing questions into the Q&A, because we're going to jump right into that in a moment. So these last bullet points that you're seeing are what we want to leave you with, but I'm just going to kind of give high level the top 3 things that we want to share, and that is first and foremost that it's super important, right, that you take the time to dig into your awards so you're sure you understand what the costs are and what aid you're receiving. Not all award letters are going to make it super simple for you to know grants versus loans versus work studies. So you're going to have to really look. And now that we understand colleges do their own thing in their own way, it's even more important that you pay attention and use critical thinking when you're comparing your awards. And whenever you're not sure, ask for help. And second, it's important to understand that the aid presented to you for your first year of college may not be promised for all of your years at that college. So that's with relation to grants, that's with relation to scholarships. You'll need to ask questions to be sure that you're considering whether costs like tuition even are fixed, as well as that your gift aid like grants are repeatable and renewable. And for any scholarships you receive, they should be explicit about whether or not it's a one-year grant or a multi-year grant. And if you're not sure, you can ask them. And you can also find the information about whether your scholarship is going direct to the college or to you. Usually from the scholarship organization, they will tell you that. But if it's not clear, be sure to ask them so that you know. Lastly, you really want to work with the adults and allies in your life to recognize when you're in a financially vulnerable situation. Work with advisors at your high school and college access organizations like Scholar Match and Students Rising Above and EAOP. Whatever that you're involved in, if you need to, ask for help. You'll need to be ready to tackle the indirect costs of going to college. And we're already hearing about issues that students are having around housing and food insecurity, and this is across the country. The affordability of a college means that for you, the student, you don't have to be distracted during your college experience wondering about basic everyday needs. You get to instead focus more on being a strong student and living that college life. So that's the last kind of points we wanted to share with you. We're excited to open it up now for question and answers. We have about 15 minutes. So take one more minute to type in your question and just give me a few seconds while I grab the first set of questions. I will be right back. One moment. Thanks again, everybody, for typing such great questions in. Okay, and it looks like we're ready for our first set of questions. So we really appreciate the request for clarity around loans. So John, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to ask you 3 different questions. And if you could answer them, they're all in relation to loans, as well as closing this topic out with anything else you want us all to know about loans. So the first is, are college freshmen eligible for up to the $5,500 in federal loans that we keep talking about, even if the college doesn't package that in? And is it always supposed to be up to $3,500 in subsidized and $2,000 in unsubsidized? Does family income play a role in that? And then lastly, if they qualify for Parent Plus loans, and it's in the, if Parent Plus loans are in the award statement, does that mean they qualify? John?
Yes, so great questions. First part, are all college freshmen eligible? Yes, so when you apply through FAFSA, that's how your eligibility is confirmed, and it's based on your needs, so your financial circumstances and your families. As far as in regards to the 5,500, typically for a dependent student, you're able to take the max amount of 5,500 in federal loans. That's including the federal unsubsidized loan and the subsidized loan. Now you can take the Parent Plus loan, that's an additional one. For some dependent students who may need more money, but maybe when their parents applied for the Parent Plus loan, you got declined, then you're able to get an increase on the unsub loans that you're able to take out more than the 2,000 that would be left open. So another example, depending on your family circumstance, you might not be eligible to receive a subsidized loan, but then you're going to get the unsub loan. So that is really dependent on financial, your family's financial circumstance. Again, I want to reiterate that. And again, if you end up needing more than the 5,500 amount and you're unable to get the Parent Plus loan, then you will actually be able to get the max amount that independent students get, which is 9,500 combined, right? So 3,500 in sub loans and the rest in unsub loans. And then when it comes to your second and third and beyond years, it gradually slowly increases. So your second year, your total amount in sub and unsub loans is 6,500 for dependent students, and then 10,500 for independent students. 4,500 of that being subsidized loan, and then your third year and beyond, again, that number comes out to be 7,500 for dependent students and 12,500 for independent students. And then again, for this part, the sub max that you can take is 5,500 for both the dependent and independent students. So the next part of that was, do I already qualify for Parent Plus loan if it's on the award statement? So again, we kind of went through that. No, a school could offer you that, but the qualification is dependent on you going to the website, to the federal website and applying for it, and that's based on creditworthiness. So they're just saying that you should apply for it. Anyone can apply for it, but that does not guarantee that you already received it. And then how does a student go about paying off their interest on unsubsidized loans? And is it something they can easily do online, monthly? Can they set up for a monthly auto pay? Yeah, so once you already have your loan set up, you have to go through promissory note, you have to create an account. And once you do all those things, if you are planning to try and pay the loan as you're going through school, those options will be available there. That's all really dependent on the loans you take out specifically. So without getting too much detail, yes, there's options for you to pay for it. And depending on the terms you get. So if you get federal loans, you don't get a penalty for paying right as you're not paying your loans off early. Whereas for some private loans, sometimes they kind of ding you and put more interest or fees for you paying it early off. This is another reason why we're recommending, if you're taking any loans out, maximizing your federal subsidized loan first and then going to your unsub loan before you touch any other loans.
That is so insightful, John. Super helpful. Thank you. And since now that we talked a little bit about loans, and if there are any follow-up questions regarding loans, please feel free to type them, everyone. Can we jump a little bit into work study and just earnings? And could you give some clarification into what federal work study eligibility is? It looks like some folks have seen students who should have had federal work study, or at least should have been eligible for it, but they didn't see it in their award letters. Is that normal? Why do we know why some schools list work study on their financial aid package and others don't? Would you be able to help with that, John?
Yeah, so the general answer to that is federal work study programs. The money is given from the federal government to schools, and they get different allocations. So certain schools might have bigger funding pool for that. The eligibility is really based on the disbursement on the school. So again, the way you are eligible for federal work study is based on your financial need through your FAFSA, and then secondly, it's based on how much of the funding is left over that the school can disperse. And again, to reiterate that, just because you're eligible doesn't mean you're going to receive it. It just means that you have the opportunity now to be first in line on certain on-campus jobs that are designated federal work study. And I want to clarify, if it shows $2,000 work study, what it initially just says then is you're first in line to try and get a job. You're still competing with other students who also have work study, but you only work up the hours all the way up to the 2,000 amount that you've been awarded. After that, you're not able to continue that work study any longer. So that's the biggest difference between a normal on-campus job that is not a federal work study versus a federal work study one. But clarify, make sure that you know which employment you're getting, especially if you are getting only $2,000 or $1,000 in federal work study eligibility, then you might want to plan to have a job that's already going to allow you to switch to earn more money throughout the school year. Yeah.
Thanks for that, John. Very helpful. All right, and so it looks like there was a question around grants. If you wouldn't mind taking that as well, John. So the question is, why does my SEOG grant only show on financial aid award letters for California schools, but not for out-of-state schools?
So again, that's another federal funding, and that is also dependent on that school. So certain schools utilize that or have that access to that fund, certain schools don't. And again, when you're applying out of state, funding will look very different because you're also not going to be eligible for Cal Grant and other things. So even though it's a federal program, that federal program is dispersed not the same amount to every school, but also they're dictating who they want to give the need to. So maybe you might have went out to a out-of-state school where a lot of that need was already given out to other students.
Great, thank you. There's also a question around selective service. Does my child need to register for selective service as the FAFSA is requesting us to make corrections? And I'm happy to take a first stab at this, and John, please feel free to add to it. But your student who has a gender of male will need to register for selective service as soon as they turn 18. if they submitted their FAFSA and they weren't 18 yet, they didn't have to. But if your student has turned 18 at the time that they're making corrections, I believe they will need to register for selective service. John, do you have anything you want to contribute to that?
No, that is completely correct. So you can opt not to do that, but that just means that you're not going to be eligible to receive any of the financial aid.
Great, thank you so much. And this question just came in, but because it's related to loans, I just thought we might jump back to it, John, if you don't mind. So there's a request for you to repeat what you said about the dollar amounts of government loans for those whose families would not qualify for a Parent Plus loan.
Okay. So again, this is a dependent student who is filing and their parents filed for a Parent Plus loan, but then they got denied that, right? So for first year, that would mean that you should have access then to additional unsubsidized loan amount. So that would mean if you got a full max of $3,500 in subsidized amount, then they would up that up to an additional $6,000. So instead of only being $2,000, you get an increase of $4,000. So your total for that year in loans can be $9,500 in federal loans without being able to access the Parent Plus loan for your first year.
Thanks, John. And I hope that that clarified it for the folks who've been noting about loans as well. So why don't we talk a little bit about appeals, John, if you wouldn't mind, because there's some questions asking, you know, is there any way to get around our expected family contribution, our EFC, especially if it's high and that's impacting how much or how little gift aid there is. And what if, you know, a student cannot, you know, they're offered a Parent Plus loan, but they're not planning to apply for it, or they don't believe they'll qualify for it. How could they turn that to, you know, other potential aid? And I believe that part of the answer is appeals. And so if you're looking at your financial aid award letters, it's really important that you start for those colleges where you believe that your circumstances have changed, like loss of family income, a death in the family, increase in medical bills, you know, with what's going on in the world around COVID. There's a lot of reasons why there would be special circumstances impacting students right now. So appeals, an aid appeal would be your best bet. And again, the first step is to determine what is that special circumstance that you qualify under. And we're going to post a link in the chat, but it's also going to be part of our follow-up. But we want y'all to know about a tool called Swift Student. And let me see if I can grab it. I know I had it. Okay, here it is. Okay, so I'm typing into the chat. Yep, thank you, everybody. Swift Student is a great free tool that you can use that will actually help you answer the first set of questions to figure out if you qualify for an aid appeal, and then we'll help you write the letter because it's basically a template and you're just kind of filling specific fields. So it makes the aid appeal process much easier. I know that some successful aid appeals I've seen have been, you know, multiple documents. So, you know, if you're, for example, getting better aid from college B than college A, but college A is your ideal college, you know, showing college A that additional gift aid that you receive from college B would be, you know, one example of documentation. If you have, you know, medical bills or other extended circumstances like a layoff and things of that nature, you're going to need documentation just showing that those events have occurred, and including all of that in your appeal documentation is helpful. And you just want to make sure that you submit your appeal as soon as possible before the deadline. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, John?
Yes, I just want us to be mindful, like we should be very proactive, utilize the resources that we've kind of just mentioned to get our appeals in as early as possible. In regard to that, also be mindful of the new changes or aid that you might get. So potentially with everything that's going on, some of the private institutions may be more willing to give you like a $5,000 or $10,000 additional in your appeal, but we got to make sure that that appeal is not only for a one-year grant or scholarship. Because if it's for a one-year grant or scholarship, you might get through that academic year fine your first year. But will you be able to afford that for the next 3 years if you potentially don't have that scholarship going forward? So just be really, pay close attention to the amounts and the changes that are going to be happening. Because, you know, at best case scenario, you get an increase in your scholarship and it's a renewable one for all 4 years that you're there. But what you don't want to see is a bump up for 10,000 or 15,000, and it looks great for your first year, but then it sets you up for the next 3 years having to cover that gap because that aid is going to go away.
That is an incredibly important and poignant point to make, John. I really appreciate you sharing that. Yes, it's really important that we're tracking the aid that you get each year. And I guess to end with one last question before we close out, if you wouldn't mind, John. We have a question piggybacking on some information you shared earlier about work study. How would our aid be affected if we got a job that wasn't federal work study? And is it possible for students to actually work 2 jobs if they receive federal work study? Could they do that and earn up to the stated $2,000, but then still take on another job? Is that possible, and is that recommended?
So yes, when you have work study, you want to accept that because that is an option for you. You don't want to say no to that option, especially if you need it. So again, like that question was stated, you can end up getting a work study job, which might make it easier because you don't have to compete with everyone on campus. That's the benefit of work study, is you have certain jobs that are only designated for others that are like you in the same position, which makes it easier to hunt down and get those jobs. Now, once you reach that $2,000 mark or whatever mark that they've given you, then you will need to find another job that's not work study because you've maxed out your work study. Now, in that regard, you're able to go find an on-campus job, off-campus job, anywhere you want to work. The only guidance we want to give is overall, we want to be mindful of how much you're working. If you get to a point where maybe you're working 10, 15 hours through your work study, and then you're trying to plan to work another 15 hours in a different job, and so you're spending more than half your time working instead of being in classroom, then it really kind of defeats the purpose because you're not going to be succeeding what you're going there for, right? Instead, you're going to, at the same time, take out more loans, and that's not beneficial. So as long as we're managing the right gap of work hours, that's great. One way we can do that as well is be mindful of our breaks. Whenever it's spring break, winter break, summer, those are the critical times we can up our work hours, right? We can work the full 40 hours during those times to kind of make up. So during the school year, we can try as much as we can minimize those hours to 10 to 15, ideally. That's not always the case, or it's not always feasible. Sometimes we have to go to 20, but we really don't want to push past 20.
Absolutely. Yes, it's more important that you're able to stay as focused as you can also on what you're going to college for, not just on earning the money to pay those expenses. And I super appreciate you honing in on that, John. And I just want to note that a lot of these questions have a lot to do with what another person entered as a question, which is very real, right? And the question was, how is this legal? They're just using loopholes, aren't they? It seems unethical that they're seemingly attempting to deceive students and their families. And, it's not so much a question of is this illegal? It's more of a question, an issue of systemic policies that are just created and then, perpetuated by the different colleges and institutions, mainly because, the colleges are in their specific regions with their specific cultures and their specific leadership. And so a big part of the advocacy that we're trying to do here at Moneythink is by sharing this information and being transparent about it with you, the students, with families, with college access advisors, with the colleges themselves, in hopes that we can bring more clarity and transparency and equity to this process for your benefit, right? As well as for generations to come. So we really appreciate your time, folks. We want to remind you that if you've been asking about, is this recorded? Will you get a copy of the recording? You will not only get a copy of this recording, you will also get a deep guide that we have, which actually goes through each slide of this PowerPoint and each point. So it'll really go through the differences between the loans, go through the differences between the grants. It even has talking points on how to talk to your college and to your parents about specific topics. So please look out for that email. It'll also be an opportunity for you to subscribe and learn more and get more updates from us as we put more content out. So if we can just go to the closing, I just want to thank everyone again for your participation today. For those who joined us on Facebook Live, we're going to have, again, the recording posted, the guide posted. Thank you for your participation. It means so much to us that you all were involved. We really wish you all the best of luck this College Decision Day, and we hope you make use of the additional information we send to you to make that the best decision just for you, okay? This is your time, everybody. Good luck.